Hello, I'm back for this week's edition of MMA News. Um, so, on the week of UFC on Fox event. So, here's. I'm going to break down what happened last weekend, and then I'm also going to go over what is happening, of course, this weekend. Now, we had Invicta Fighting Championships 2, where the main event was Shayna Baszler versus Sarah McMahon. That was a pretty good fight. It was a pretty close back and forth fight. Both of them were wrestlers, but Baszler kind of had more of a submission background. However, McMahon was able to bring on more of an offense, in my opinion. She was able to keep him more active, able to keep things a little bit more in control. And that's ultimately what won her the fight. It was a very close fight, but it was ultimately her fight. So that sets her up for the October event where she gets to face off for the bantamweight title. That could potentially in the future pit her against the winner of Ronda versus Kaufman, which should be a good fight, but that's a little ways off. As for, she has to establish herself, etc., etc., etc. So that was then. It was a good fight. That was the point. So, then the next fight was Hitomi Akano versus Alexis Davis. Davis went out there and pretty much did Akano and ended up getting a submission in the second round. Now, Akano was one of two fighters to come over from Japan as part of the deal with the Jules promotion. And one of two to be trained by Megumi Fuji, who's a legend in her own right, and they were kind of both in turn trained by Josh Barnett. That whole catch wrestling background. But anyways, so in Akano's most notable fight being when she faced off against Chris Cyborg and got her rear end whomped. So there was that fight. Then we had Liz Camacho versus Caitlin Young. Camacho, the Marine, she's fought in Strikeforce a few times, and once again, we had a rear naked choke in the second round. She beat Caitlin Young. Both of them are good fighters in their own right in bantamweight. Now, those the Davis fight and the Davis and Camacho victories were both in bantamweight. It has been confirmed that Sarah McMahon will be fighting for the currently vacant Invicta bantamweight title. So the question is, which one of those two fighters will she end up facing off? Will she face off against Camacho, or will she face off against Davis? Both of them are good athletes. Both of them are extremely good fighters. They go out there in the bang, and obviously they're pretty decent at submissions. So the question is ultimately going to be which is ultimately picked, and we'll find out between now and October, obviously. Then you had the Lacey Schuchman versus Ayama Hamasaki, and once again, good fight. But obviously this time it was more the experience of Hamasaki winning over Schuchman, who went out and did who fought pretty decently, but ultimately didn't pan out. And that was in the strawweight division, not a division really addressed in the unified rules, but not in men's unified mixed martial arts, but obviously in women's, it's not really a. I believe it goes to one. I believe the weight limit's 115, if I observed correctly. Because you have bantamweight, you have flyweight, you have featherweight, and then you have strawweight, and then I think you have a thing called atom weight, which is like 105. I don't know. It's the lighter weights. Women aren't that heavy to begin with. So yeah, it was a strawweight fight. That's how that one panned out. Then this one was a real good one. Raquel Palali versus Amanda Nunes. Nunes is a tall woman. And she went out there, and it was a pretty good fight. Once again, submission. The women do not disappoint. They obviously can't afford not to. They can't afford to have a boring fight. The Invicta is almost a statement to Dana White, basically trying to justify keeping a women's division, because obviously he doesn't have a high opinion of mixed martial arts, and here they are. They're in their own league trying to prove to Dana White that they have just as much right to be in a major promotion as the men do. And I certainly agree. He doesn't, at the time that, MMA was big, or women's MMA was getting big with Elite XC and stuff like that, you could probably, at the time there wasn't much of a weight. There wasn't much of a talent pool, but, time has gone on, and there's a talent pool, there's weight classes, there are fighters out there. Now, granted, it's still developing, but maybe by the time that, but it's very possible that by the time, they decide to fold Strikeforce, there will be a good enough talent pool to actually justify bringing a weight division over, and that also depends on how Cyborg does when she returns and stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of factors involved in that. There's politics involved and stuff like that. We'll be watching this, but in the meantime, we know that there's the upcoming, in terms of women's MMA, we know that there's the upcoming Ronda Rousey Sarah Kaufman fight, and then of course you have a contender fight going on in that same fight card. And then we know that there's the Invicta fight in October. So that's about all that I really want to cover with the Invicta FC card. What I want to go over is the upcoming UFC on Fox card. This is their 4th time on Fox. They are in the Staples Center, and coincidentally, they're in California again for a that kind of a fight card. So it's going to be interesting to see how things pan out. But anyways, of course, so you have the main event: Mauricio Shogun Rua, former UFC champion, versus Brandon Vera, former contender. So you have these two fighters. They are both coming off of losses. Shogun fought Henderson, trying to get into a contender spot, and he ended up losing in a really epic 5-round fight. And then so he's coming off of a loss. Then you have Brandon Vera, who at one point had really high hopes of becoming, of being a heavyweight contender, but then one thing led to another, and he ended up, he was put on the shelf, and then, one thing, eventually he ended up going to, he ended up dropping down to light heavyweight after he ended up actually fighting two decent heavyweights, Tim Sylvia, who, as we know nowadays, is rather plump. and Fabricio Werdum. He's currently on a okay, Brandon Vera actually won. What happened was he lost to Werdum and Sylvia, dropped down, and oh my, was that really 4 years ago? Yeah, it was 4 years ago. So, and then he dropped down to light heavyweight, had some good fights there, but then he went on what was originally a 3-fight skid against Randy Couture, John Jones, and Thiago Silva. All of which, those are three pretty good contenders. Now, there was a point where initially, when he lost in the Thiago Silva fight, he was at one point released from the promotion. Then we had a negative. Then we had a false drug test where it was proved that Silva had supplied a false urine sample, and Dana White decided to bring it back in after all. So that happened, and he fought against Elliot Marshall and won, but he hasn't fought in close to a year almost. But apparently Dana White feels that the winner of this fight gets a shot at the light heavyweight title. That was of course something that as we were saying, as I was saying, Brandon Vera eventually had a hope of doing, but just because of various things, he got shelved and stuff like that. So they're going to fight. The winner of which gets the winner of the Jones Henderson fight. Which, in all honesty, I would like Henderson to win, but Jones is really up there. So, anyways, there's that fight. Then on another light heavyweight fight, there's Yota Machida versus Ryan Bader. Bader just coming off of his win of Rampage, and Machida, the last time he fought was when he got choked out by John Jones. So, Machida at one point was thought to be a very good contender and stuff like that, and then he had kind of a lackluster fight with Shogun, in which he got an immediate rematch, and as it turns out, it was justified because Machida lost his first fight. So that happened, and but he got a few redemptions fights, namely Randy Couture, and then he got a shot against John Jones, and John Jones once again showed people why he's such a good fighter. He choked him out and just plopped him on in the octagon afterwards. So that fight, those two are definitely, the winner is definitely in contendership. Then at light heavyweight we have Joe Lauzon, Jamie Varner. Joe Lauzon has been a staple, and Varner, he went into, he was with WEC, ended up getting cut after he lost the title, and then kind of went on a skid. But then he fought his way back in, and now here he is. He's a contender, kind of. Then Mike Swick versus Marcus Johnson. Johnson being notable for his appearances in the Ultimate Fighter US versus UK. Mike Swick, he's been AWOL for a while, just from what I understand, because of health issues. So he's coming back, and it should be a good fight card. We have some good underfights, which are on Fuel TV, which I will not be able to see because I don't have Fuel. Which we may see a few, we may see some of them, just depending on how the broadcast goes. We have no idea. But anyways, that is it, and thank you for your time. Have a good week.